So then at that point, it became clear to me that what they were essentially saying is pay attention. This is for real. And then he opened his eyes and he goes, we're shifting in three, two, one. A golden mask closed in his face and a beam of light just illuminated him. He looked like completely different. He looked like an object more than a person at that moment, almost like a statue. But the scale of what I've witnessed and felt cannot be attributed to anything else. There's nothing else in the human or English language that exists but God Almighty. It was just God. It was just that level of immensity. The different beings you can encounter, the insectoids, the jesters, the dark entities, the light entities. There's so many different kinds. The jesters are particularly interesting because they seem to be one of the most powerful beings in existence, basically. It almost feels like it goes God and then jesters. That's how powerful they are. The insectoids seem to be simulating our universe. So they're the ones responsible for this and a few others. And then everything in the room was shredded to pieces. Like everything. And I saw all the dark stuff, black stuff, just like blown out of the room like with a hurricane. Which was like, and then he opened his eyes and he goes, we're shifting in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you for taking the time to meet with me and our
Course.
audience here on the Soul Wisdom Collective. First, to set some context for you, so you know a little bit about where I'm coming from. I'm an engineer, a futurist. I've been a successful software entrepreneur, and I'm a lifelong student of philosophy and metaphysics. And so I am extremely pleased that the world has come to what it has so far here. There's just so much juicy material. I'm going to do an intro for you, if that's okay, and please correct anything that may be wrong here. My guest today is Danny Goler, a self-described psychonaut, researcher, and filmmaker, and the founder of the nonprofit Code of Reality. About a decade ago, Danny was guided through synchronicities to an incredible discovery, combining DMT, powerful psychedelic, with diffracted red laser light that's projected onto a surface. He began perceiving a hidden code that seems to be embedded in reality itself. Moving symbols, geometric structures, a kind of self-executing pattern beneath the physical world, perhaps. What made him take it seriously wasn't his personal experience, it's what happened next. He found that other people, using the same protocol, reported the same code. By now, that community may number in the thousands. And from there, it's grown to a global research network, a nonprofit, an upcoming documentary called The Discovery, and appearances everywhere from Vice to a news segment on CNN. And what interests us the most here is the philosophical claim underneath the phenomenon that consciousness, not matter, is the underlying fabric of reality, and that this code might be something like the source layer. Danny sits right at the intersection of leading edge psychedelic exploration, simulation theory, and idealist philosophy. And he's not shy about following those ideas wherever they lead. And that's exactly where we want to go today in this conversation. Welcome to the Soul Wisdom Collective, Danny.
Thank you so much for having me on, Daniel. It's a pleasure.
Was that pretty accurate, that intro?
Yeah. Nothing that you said is untrue.
So let's get right into it. There's a fair amount of interviews with you. Do you see the laser? What do you think the code is? What do you think that code is that everybody's seeing?
Yeah, I'm separating what I think than what we can establish scientifically. As an engineer, I'm sure you can appreciate that.
Yes.
There is a certain space where ideation lives, and then, engineering is where the rubber touches the road, right? It either works or it doesn't. It's kind of, and to some degree, fields like theoretical physics seem to be much more divorced from, what we are actually trying to touch. But I'm not so sure that's true. I think that the reason that theoretical physics is so hard is because you actually are trying to stay as loyal to what we already know, while for long periods of time, sometimes decades, sometimes more than that, not really have any access to experimental data. the reason I'm saying all this is because, the claim that I'm putting on the table, which is that I've discovered something that in fact is there fundamentally in the world, and we can see it with this laser and the usage of a psychedelic substance. Uh, it belongs in a very contentious family of claims. It really is right there on the cusp of what is possible to claim to be real because our ontology lacks to some degree in serious academic circles of how to deal with claims of this kind, right? So I'm constantly aware of not just what I'm saying, but also how it might come across to different kinds of listeners. And very often people love following me there because it's phantasmagorical and it's like really kind of, fun to postulate. But our aim in Code of Reality is also to communicate to mainstream science. I wanted to give this little, preamble just because I want people to be aware that I tend to be careful with my answers, but at the same time, I am making the separation. So if you ask me, Danny, what do I think it is? I think it's some form of a breadcrumb, so to speak, left there for us to follow, that you can only arrive at if you've solved enough puzzles, so to speak, or passed enough intelligence tests. And that, by the way, would include the spiritual intelligence test. Like, are you willing to postulate that there's more than what just the immediate environment you seem to find yourself in? And that's my personal opinion. That's kind of like a breadcrumb left for us. Scientifically, there's very little we can say with substance currently, aside from the fact that, it always appears the same for everybody, it seems. And in fact, the next iteration of what we're doing now in Code of Reality with our core team, David Carter, my partner, Chris Paris, director of producer of the film, and Sterling Cooley, who's our brain scan expert. So we're basically devising these very clever techniques to try and answer the question whether people are actually seeing the same thing, or are we talking about something that is kind of similar, and then people, fill in the blanks by talking to each other. Like, which one is it? And of course, the holy grail would be something like a super advanced Neuralink or something that can just record directly from the cortex. That would be ideal, right?
Right.
But until that moment comes, okay. So, for example, um, we developed this software for Apple Vision Pro where we have an image of the laser band inside of the VR space, basically, and the code seems to appear statically if you smoke DMT in it, which is kind of interesting because in reality, when you look at it, it's moving. And what this allows us to do is to actually label it. Because if you're connected to a brain scan and you see something, well, in Apple Vision Pro, one thing that it's incredibly good at is eye tracking and coordinates inside of the space. So, like if you click on something, it gives you a very accurate representation of where you clicked, right? It's a very high resolution technically. So, if I label where I clicked, like where I reported the character, and then it recorded my brain state in that moment, created a correlation there, and then I'm giving you six symbols out of which you're picking to kind of tell me what is the closest thing to what you're saying you saw, which actually topologically we isolated the most common six that people usually report. So they open up in a radial menu and then you get to pick. So now you labeled it, location, brain state, and you're reporting what you think you saw. You keep doing this. It will take some time, but after a few months of this, I'm pretty sure that we're going to have some data to report on. Because when you're going to start comparing between individuals, the AI is going to have a pretty good understanding out of a Rosetta Stone it's going to create for each brain individually, whether there's data to be compared, or is it in fact the case that people kind of just report like a ballpark of a thing, but we'll find out. So that's one way in which we're approaching this. So to your question, when we're going to start having answers of the flavor that is supported more by data of this kind, I'm going to be able to tell you with more confidence what we think we're looking at. Currently, the answer is very disappointing to a lot of people, which is that we don't have the first clue what we're really looking at.
So if you have two people, or have you been able to have two people looking at the same light, perhaps from slightly different directions, see the code at the same time?
Yeah, we had 15 people in the room at the same time. Look, but the problem with that is that you can report generalities to one another. There is no way you can uh, communicate specifics about this because there's millions of characters, literally millions, and they're tiny and they're moving all the time. You
Okay.
can't like catch one and go, "Oh, here's that one," because it's already gone. but you
How
can
do
catch
they
it with your attention, basically. Yeah.
how do they move? What's the movement like?
There is a field of what appears to be like a field of buckyballs. So the same as like carbon 60, kind of like these truncated icosahedrons, and then there's just like a bunch of them made out of this code. They're all basically the code is kind of like the pixels out of which everything is made out of. So there's a field of these buckyballs stretching in all three dimensions, x, y, and z, including into the infinite axis, and then like inwards, right? And then they're all arranged in these columns, and these columns are moving back and forth. So they rotate around the buckyballs, they move back and forth with the columns, and also they switch in their own spot, just like like the old briefcase code thing. So it's
Right.
like they'll switch in one spot. So all of this is happening at once. Compiled on top of that is the fact that it's super tiny, discernible enough to see, oh yeah, like I'm looking at some kind of a symbolic representation of some sort. And it does not I'm sure that in Shannon's information theory, there's probably some technical ways of dealing with what I'm trying to outline, but the symbols have the kind of quality that has this kind of perfect optimal. They belong to an optimal kind of character that instantiates meaning. So, like if I would see a bunch of triangles and squares, it's not strong enough. It's kind of like, okay, well, your brain is doing something with edge detection. It's like it's not strong enough. But if you're looking at something that looks like Japanese katakana, it feels way more intentional than it looks too complex to just be accidental. You know what I mean? There's enough curvature there, there's enough, and there's so many of them, and they're very convincing on their own right. And in addition to that, they appear in such a way that is um, holographically real. It feels like a holographic image you're looking at, but it has the same kind of substantial nature, like a projection would look like somebody did something to show you this, versus just kind of a random unfolding that can happen with hallucinations, which have, well, first of all, they have an evolution depending on the metabolism of the substance in your body. Also, they're pretty flimsy in terms of continuation. So, like if you look away and you look back at a hallucination, it might be something else, or it will morph and it would move to do something else. So you close your eyes and it disappears, something like that. The what we call the code of reality or core never does that. Never does that. It's just the same thing. It's like you're looking at some kind of a hyper object. And again, there's a lot of explanations on the table of the, I guess you can call it the regular kind, that can satisfy even me absolutely if it's going to hold water. There's one idea that was voiced recently by a brilliant independent researcher. His name is Anthony Ness. I also had him on my podcast. And he wrote a paper that postulates that maybe what we're looking at is a direct projection into V1. So there's a network in the brain responsible for moving information from the eyes to the visual cortex. It's called V1, and it's arranged in a semi-crystalline structure. So he's saying maybe what happens is that DMT reduces the activity in the auxiliary networks. So all you're left with is just V1, which is technically is responsible for edge detection and really intersections of lines.
Right.
And because there's only very little amount of ways of intersection of lines you can actually do in general, there's T, L, and X.
Yes.
From these three, you can construct exactly 36. That's it. So he says maybe what the reason that it looks so similar to people is because if you're looking into V1, so to speak, which would still be really cool if we can kind of do that, if that's the case,
Right.
almost like a microscope into your own networks, then he says it would explain why people seeing so similar things, because the network is pretty much the same across individuals as looked at like from an overview, right? This is why doing the test that I just described to you with Apple Vision Pro is so key, because if we do in fact find, which we haven't, I want to be very clear, but if we do in fact find that the same characters appear at the same place in the image for different people, then
Right.
that theory flies out the window, because that's just too specific. That's then that means there's some information instantiated in the image, basically.
But the material, the images move a little too quickly, it sounds like. To
Yeah, and it's the difficulty is compounded by the fact I don't know how experienced you are with these substances, but
I've
just like you've dabbled, okay, your short-term memory suffers. It's just an effect of what DMT and other substances do. THC does the same thing.
well,
It's almost like that brilliant thought that you just had, but you can't really say. So even translating from the image to the paper is extremely difficult. We had people do it, like people who are extremely talented, like artists that they can kind of do it. That's how we pulled something out. Like we managed to discern what people report the most. But it is a very difficult task to do, especially when you're in state.
So I think you're being pretty careful to be scientific, coming from a scientific perspective, which I do appreciate. But I'm also extremely interested in the metaphysical, the things that, we have hints about in reality, the things that the greatest uh, minds in the world have pointed to, that the various philosophies and religions have pointed to, that we're living in an illusion, and Maya, and the simulation hypothesis, to be more current with.
Yeah.
I saw your interview with Rizwan Virk. Let's go there a little bit. I'd like to get, if you don't mind, to your philosophical and metaphysical perspective on, what do you think about reality? I believe you're an idealist, right? That you think
At
it,
this point, it's pretty clear to me that's the only viable explanation. Yeah.
and I have been deep into the near-death experience world for over 2 decades, and I've been on the board of the International Association for Near-Death Studies, help with their conferences. So I know a lot about this subject. And, the materialists have their explanations, but they don't really hold up. But that still leaves a bit of a vacuum. What is really going on? Now, for me, I think it's that this extra layer, or layers, I think there are many of them, they're very fluid in a way that it might be why we come here, is because this is more concrete, as opposed to, I have an idea and it manifests. Let's go to a place where it's more concrete and more standard, and it's harder to do that. What do you think about those layers, and what's your philosophy?
So thank you for this. Yeah, now that we've established that at least we're capable of some scientific thinking, we can play a little bit.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, so this is the other part of my thinking, right? Which is that the reason that I even went in this direction and try to figure out how we can establish if the DMT space is in fact real in the same way that this place is real was because I had a set of experiences that were so convincingly real that I could no longer entertain, at least on the inside of my, from behind my eyes, I could no longer Is everything okay? I don't know if
Well,
you
no, and that's what the near-death experiencers all say. It was more
yeah.
real than
More real
here.
than real, yeah. And then you have to ask yourself the question, it's like, well, 1 second, please. Do we understand the world only through what the collective is saying? Or are we experiencing the world through how we experience the world? It's true that there's something about consensus reality that is pretty valid. And again, this whole conversation between materialism and idealism, I want my engineers to be materialists, especially the ones that build planes and buildings. I would appreciate if they look at everything as matter. I would be happy to, I don't want them to think that anything can be anything. Um,
Helps when you're writing code too.
Yeah, yeah. The logic has to, but the reality of it is that I think that there's still. I think that there's and I'm not sliding off the point. I just want to maybe say a couple of words about this. I don't think that. I think that people have an impression in general that somehow these terms, logic, linear thinking, it almost has a negative flavor in spiritual circles, as if when the spiritual world exists, as if it does not abide by any rules. Like logic follows you everywhere. If you don't know it, that's fine. But of course, there's logic to whatever it is happening. It's just the logic of how it occurs, right? So to me, these concepts are not really uh, opposed to anything in the spiritual pursuit. And it's very important to remember that because actually one of the central questions that I asked myself when I had this very realistic experience on DMT was, well, first of all, I was convinced. And I just became convinced that like there's simply no way that I made it up. That it's just like it was so outside of what I ever thought about or postulated, or this was not concepts I was familiar with. And that was already after being a pretty experienced psychonaut for 20 years. Like I knew what's in the cards, right? And all of a sudden I've experienced a being that was as real as you are to me, maybe more because he was standing next to me, right? So that was, it was on another level. And then you have to ask yourself a question. Okay, what do I trust here? Do I trust my senses that I just saw this? Or do I trust the fact that everybody is saying, well, statistically, it's more likely that you're like, but I don't experience the world statistically. I experience the world as what it appears to be, even if it's an anomaly. So I had to make a choice. And the choice wasn't made in 1 second. It was made, over time. But basically, when I kept on following that thread and I had more and more of these experiences, I built a world model around the fact that, hey, it's possible to experience this extra thing if you do the right things. And then it seems to be behaving with as normal of laws to itself as our world behaves in relationship to itself. And then how do you go about this? Like, okay, fine. So now I basically had to make a choice after a few months I did, which is that after very clear communication from them, I said, okay, how about instead of constantly trying to ask myself, is there another explanation to this? Like, is it just a cool, neat trick of the mind? Can I allow myself to borrow from things that I don't have yet a way to prove? But can I take a loan there and just say, let me see what it feels like if I just trust it? If I just kind of follow it for what it is, just
Yeah.
take it at face value instead of pretending that it's something else. I can always go back.
Yeah.
I think I had enough of an understanding of myself that I knew I'm not going to lose myself in these ideas. So I said, okay, well, let's just play the game. Let's put the if, let's remove it. Let's see what it feels like inside the body to think that it is the case, in
Right.
fact, the case. And all of a sudden, there's other ideas that started flowing because there's a certain confidence that comes with that. I switched the thinking that maybe to knowing. And
Right.
this is, by the way, a very tricky thing for people because they think knowing means somehow it's an irreversible state or knowing is uh, more than what any human can say. I think that's malarkey. I think humans occupy a state, which is a state of being. It's called knowing. It's when your brain collected enough data points about something that you now act with in accordance to it, you act with certain amount of confidence now. Okay, so you know there's a floor there versus thinking that maybe there's some kind of a quadrillion in one chance that it's going to be in a quantum state that's going to give way and you're going to fall through the floor. You don't care about that. It's a, you know there's a floor there. So in the same way, I occupy that state. The second I did that, all of a sudden the communication became crystal clear. It was as real to me as you are to me. I saw these beings that would like show me all kinds of things. I saw that there's so many different species. Yeah, go ahead. Did you want to
So
interject?
was that during some of your singular DMT experiences, or was that part of the DMT-X, the extended experience?
No, the MTX came way, way later. It was probably first time it was last year that we did it. So it was during the time where I basically smoked DMT every day, all day for a year plus. So I lived on DMT. I basically was on DMT the whole time. Like I was smoking it nonstop all day, everywhere I went. Not, I don't recommend it, but that's what I was doing just because I wanted to see what else are we missing. I
So
went to the gym, I drove.
were you in and out, or were you mostly in?
Well, obviously, if you smoke, then it goes away pretty quickly. But then I would not even wait 5 minutes and go back in again. Like I had my vape on me the whole time, and when was home, I would do it even more because I would do it with a powder. So I had so I would just do like literally like all day, but just for the sake of seeing what else we're missing, like in other places, like outside. Is there, because not a lot of people do that, right? Not a lot of people go to the gym and see what's going on there when you smoke DMT or things like this. Um, and I discovered that yeah,
What were
they're
some of one's
everywhere.
what were
The
some of
what?
one's memorable things?
Oh, I mean, come on. This is like you're talking about it's just like a mesh. There's different beings. I think the things that are the most memorable are just the realism with which certain beings appear. There's, I guess, what you would call them. I never learned much about them. I'm not big on like names and things like this. I can just tell you what they felt like to me. Later, a bunch of people who claim to be experts in these different beings, they told me, "Oh, it's this, it's that." Of course, I don't remember what they said because I think names are not that important. But
But
basically, for example, the
don't
what
they
the
have
what? Sorry.
physical don't they have physical appearances?
Yeah, some of them do. For example, the blue, they can choose to be more ephemeral or more physical. Like, for example, the most pleasant ones, when they appear just in your body, the way it feels, I guess they are, what are they? Like, people call them the avians or something. They're like blue, they're very tall. Could see them as clear as people. And when they appear, there's like this sense of novelty in the room. Everything percolates up. Everything goes up. It's like you can feel it's like a very light. I always describe it as like somebody opened a soda pop, and it's like your whole body just fizzles. It's like a very pleasant, and you can feel this kind of elated, kind of thing.
Effervescence.
Um, yeah, that's the perfect word. Thank you. I'm going to be using it from now on. It's almost like you hear these almost like angelic songs. They seem to be the custodians of wisdom and knowledge. That's kind of like what they seem to be doing. When they appear, it's very pleasant. But every time anybody in that space, and sometimes you would interact with entities that would feel a lot darker, but not always like, what people would describe like demonic. Sometimes it's just like they're just weird and they're kind of like this little troll that lives under the bridge, but he's cool. Like it's just like he's weird, like, and it's like, and that's
Like,
cool. I like it.
like that
Uh,
goth kid in high school.
yeah. I think I'm generally very tolerant of weirdness. Like I really like it. So I think it was easier for them to just appear, and I'm pretty neutral. I wasn't slapping a sticker on it. I wasn't like, oh, I think it's this, I think it's that. I wasn't doing any of that. I was just kind of allowing it to show me what it is. And then over time, I understood that really they either won't or they can't give you any concrete information. Because every time I would ask, I'm like, okay, they were basically trying to constantly show me they're real. And I was like, okay, well, I'm buying it. Great. Uh, Help me help you. I was like, help me. How do I show other people? Can you show me how to build a spaceship? Can I get info? Something like this, right? So it was very clear that whenever they showed me things, they're super esoteric and completely not applicable in this world. An example I always use because it was funny because it was under some convincing that I had to like get through to them. I was like, come on, man, show me something. And they were like, okay, fine. And I'm like, oh, finally. And then all they showed me is that when they jump into my chest and they're like, go like this, go like this. I'm like, okay. So then I go like this and then the room folds in half while they're in my chest. And I go like, okay, well, I mean, that's cool, but
What
other
I
people
do with that?
do this. Like, what do you do with this? So then I realized that it's just not forthcoming. It's not going to happen. So then I said, look, I'm always going to come back and visit. I love it, but we're going to stop doing this every day because it's not getting anywhere.
Well, doing it every day, didn't you risk being cut off? You know how people get cut off?
I Yeah, this is people ask me all the time. First of all, I'm not so sure that that's what's happening. It might, I don't know, but from my experience, it doesn't hold scrutiny if you really look at it. Because first of all, to say is that we know that's real, so we know this can happen. This did happen in a clinical setting once, so we know this is real. A lady that was hooked up to a DMTX, the aliens told her she was done, and she was done, even though the trip was fully going. So we know this can happen. But whether this is actually like them looking you out for you misbehaving or something like this, I think it's just way too simplistic of an explanation. Because if you look at all the people that are actually misbehaving and are not being locked out, you know what I mean? And then when you look at the people who kind of like go in, they didn't really do anything wrong. And then somehow I think that there's a good possibility that all that's happening there is that there's some kind of a technical reason in the brain. There's some kind of a overfitting, overshooting. It's also possible. The reality is that I don't know. I think people love to give a reason to it. I have enough interaction with that space to know that what is usually allowed in that space is way more than people think.
Hmm.
And also, it can be the case that these people just have to happen to have encountered a particular kind of being that in that moment didn't feel like they want them there anymore. But really, that being didn't really have any authority or anything like this. So that there's so many variations here that I try not to touch this because it's, I don't really know.
The, the only thing I can think of based on the near-death experience part is, those experiences are so unique to each individual. I think they're somewhat designed to open our minds, to give us a bigger view of reality, but also they're limited because they don't want to take us off our life path. Maybe it was taking them off their life path.
Yeah, I'm not that cavalier walking there because I think that, and this is, I know it kind of I'm ironically conservative with the kinds of claims that I'm making about things that I truly don't know, right? There's things that I can say with a certain amount of certainty because I've interacted with it for so long and the picture became crystal clear about that. This is not one of those things. It never happened to me.
Okay.
It's when I asked them about it, they seem to have no idea what I'm talking about.
Uh,
And as far as I can tell, the channel that I've discerned is essentially their government. So like there's a difference between just interacting with whomever and interacting with the actual managerial level, right? It feels different. So then when when people say these things, there's so many different variations there that it's kind of hard to say. And I will also tell you that from my personal experience, and again, I'm always open for revision, of course, but in the layers that we're usually interacting with, and people do interact with different levels, I would say that with the near death experience, it's slightly different because I think that in most cases, what people interact with there is like the higher levels,
yeah.
which are behaving differently, and they definitely have this kind of more noble path importance kind of thing. Very often in the layers right above us, or even quite a bit above us, but not like all the way up there, things are pretty terrestrial in their attitude. Like it's more like New York than some kind of a, you know what I mean? Like things are not that serious. Like it's not all about your world path, and it's
Yeah.
just, oh, here you are, cool. Like
Have you read much in these areas of philosophies and cosmologies and concepts of what reality is? Have you heard of Guy Stephen Needler?
Stephen what?
Guy, his name is Guy
Guy.
Stephen
Stephen
Needler.
Needler. Let me see his face. I'm terrible with names. I think I've seen him. Was he a physicist?
I forget what his non-spiritual background is, but he did all of these out of body type experiences, and he rose through various levels of reality, and he managed to get. He's written like 5 or 6 books. He managed to get to a level he called the source, and another level he called the origin, and he feels like he understood, and he wrote in his books how he understands the structure of reality, but at a very, from the level of the creator. And then he says the creator created 12 creator sons, and they each created their own universes, which were very distinct and different.
That sounds very Gnostic. It's
And
almost like archons and yeah. Um, yeah,
okay,
you know what
but
I mean? You
no,
know what I mean? Like I'll tell you why I'm saying this because the way that everybody playing a certain role, right? The way that I see my role is that I'm particularly hard-headed in the sense that I don't know anything. I don't care how much I love you. I don't know anything until I know it. But if I know it, I know it, right? But in order for me to graduate to knowing it, it takes a lot. So when somebody says something, okay, if I can establish this in consensus reality, great. If I
yeah,
can't, just another thing you said.
I,
And
I
then
gather
there's
these
so many. Yeah.
I gather these ideas. They're nuggets that are interesting. I put them into my puzzle box, and I'm always trying to fit the pieces together. But like
Yeah.
you, I don't jump to any conclusions. I have very few conclusions. I have lots of theories and ideas. Some of them I have more evidence for, some of them I have less evidence for, that sort of thing.
Yeah, my personal experience of this space is that it resembles almost none of what I hear people talk about, which is the issue that I'm having. I don't know what to do because I know very well-intentioned people experiencing certain things that I absolutely believe they experience, but then it does beg the question, are we just experiencing reality through a completely different lens sometimes? But what I'm interested in, even under that question, I'm still interested in the what are the walls of that made out of? Because ultimately, it will have some tissue that connects everything, even if you want to say that tissue is consciousness. And there will be some rules by which that translates from what you're experiencing to what I'm experiencing. That's the thing that I'm interested in. I'm sure you're familiar with Donald Hoffman's work. And them with the Trace Institute, I just had a wonderful conversation with their head mathematician, with Nife, brilliant guy. And we went down a little bit through like what they're actually currently using. It's called trace logic. And basically the promise is to touch upon exactly that. Like, what are the actual rules by which cognition behave? Like, I call it cognitive physics because I can't think of a better term. It's like the physics of cognition itself, you know?
Love it.
Uh, yeah. And then when we're going to start, and yesterday he said that he does think that within a year they would have a mathematical framework of defining what would cause something to appear green qualia or red qualia, depending on the mathematical object they're investigating, and that will open a door to a whole, enormous amounts of kind of prediction models that you can actually make. And to me, this is where the beauty really happens when you start combining. He also happens to be a very experienced meditator, which explains a lot, right? Like I think that what a lot of scientists lack is they're not educated enough in the internal component of everything. They're really good at formulating concepts, but they're not that great at having direct experiences of certain things. It's the combination of brilliance, of technical brilliance, and the willingness and also the ability to actually get to higher levels of cognition itself, because you actually expanding the lens to which you're observing everything. And if it falls in that category, Andres Gomez is another person like that. Donald Hoffman himself, because he meditates. So I guess I'm saying this to the effect of I'm, I'm super fascinated by people's accounts, but at a certain point there's so many hours in a day and you want to do something that where the rubber does touches the road, and
Yeah.
you actually can do something with it, because I don't subscribe to the idea that it's all just like whatever. Like there has to be some things we can learn and understand, and expand our even our technical understanding of it. And it will never happen if we just keep pretending that it's all up for grabs. And this is why I'm very careful with taking these observations. That being said, there are particular humans that when you look at them and everything they do and how they do it, even if I never have the experience that they've had, the fact that it's them specifically that are telling me this, right away I know that whatever they said is true. Why? Because of a certain way about them. They're not confabulators. They're very serious about everything else that they do. You know what I mean? There's a certain
Yeah.
signature to the person like that.
Yeah.
I have a friend like that who told me about, out of body experiences that he managed to do and everything. I never managed to do it, even though I tried.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact that it's real because he told me. Like I know that there's no way he's going to be making this up.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So to some degree, we are each other's soundboards. But in order to earn the kind of the title of a trustworthy soundboard, we do have to have some, self-respect to our coherence and technical chops as well.
So perhaps the one of the more famous people who's probably done close to, maybe not close to, it sounds like if you did it all day for a year or whatever, that's an awful lot. But Terence McKenna, some of his descriptions, do they hit home for you? Do they reflect your experience?
Terrence is my hero, and truly, he's my intellectual hero. In fact, I'm writing a feature film about him. Hopefully, who knows, one day maybe it will be made. He is one of the dearest thinkers in history to my heart. I found maybe 5% of everything he ever described to be mapped onto what I saw. The rest of it I've never seen in my life. I've never
Yeah.
seen machine elves. I've never seen self-dribbling basketballs.
Oh, you
Uh,
heard.
Never.
How about Alex Gray's artwork?
Wonderful. I do find that there's something about it that is I think it delivers the emotion beautifully. The visual to me is not digital enough, which I know he does it on purpose, but the DMT world looks very digital. His art does not. His art resembles more mushrooms to me than DMT, because it's much more earthy in nature, when DMT does not appear to me as being earthy.
Interesting. I have one of his pictures here, and I've had modest DMT experiences, and they were sort of similar. I haven't done the breakthrough. I haven't been brave enough. Now, I assume you have.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I've went as far as you can go.
So give us a sense of the breakthrough for you. I mean, many people describe it as, I'm in a different place with different reality, different people, different beings. People don't.
Yeah, it's so I don't think breakthrough is binary. I think a breakthrough is a just a it's almost like a category, right? So you can go to levels, and even the levels can be subdivided and all that stuff. But it feels like really, I guess what people would mean a breakthrough is that you simply forget that anything here exists. Like you forget that you're
Right.
you forget that you're human, you're out there somewhere, and the content is so convincingly real that in that moment you don't need anyone else to tell you that it is. You just know it. You know it by the way that it appears to you that you're actually interacting with something truly there. And then the content can be so vast in terms of what it can be presented. The different beings you can encounter, the insectoids, the jesters, the dark entities, the light entities. There's so many different kinds. And
You've
then
experienced the jesters?
oh yeah, yeah. The jesters are particularly interesting because they seem to be one of the most powerful beings in existence, basically. It
Hmm.
almost feels like it goes God and then jesters. That's how powerful they are. So they seem to have no bounds. They're the fastest thing that exists in form.
Hmm.
They are not limited to any level. They can jump from the lowest of levels to the highest of levels in a split in a picosecond. Um, they seem to be extremely powerful. They also, and I hope does not, it doesn't seem to irritate them, so I think it's okay to say, they are also extremely arrogant. They have a very
Are they?
arrogant attitude, and they have, and like very openly, like they're not the no, novel being that you would be like, they're like, yeah, look at me, I can do this, I can do that. There's like, you know,
Well,
and
if
they,
you're God, it's easy to
yeah,
be
yeah,
arrogant.
yeah. Basically, they're on top of the food chain, basically, and then. Oh, by the way, the reason I'm discerning that is because whenever one of the jesters that was coming to act with me, whenever he would appear, everybody else in the room, like all the other energies that I'm aware of, they will all go quiet. They will all just stop and kind of not move. So it was clear to me he was in
Intimidated.
charge. Yeah, yeah. And then I think if I understood correctly, the reason that they get this power is because they get to occupy a state of awareness that is both the yin and the yang yin and yang at the same time, which is a very important function. And this is also why people sometimes don't understand if they're like this deranged evil thing or they're both. They don't know. They're both at the same time. In order for source to experience anything, it has to be experienced through form or some formulation of a thing that isn't the other things. So I guess you can call it form even if it's not physical form. So they seem to be occupying the highest state of awareness of both the yin and the yang, the dark and the light, before being the actual creator, like before,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So that, yeah,
I was going to say maybe they're um, the most integrated beyond the singularity.
basically, yeah. One step above that, and you just become the source, basically. But then they have this quality that they both feel uh, like infinitely in your favor. Then they can do anything, and they can give you the ultimate grace. And at the same time, well, it's the Joker. Like you don't know. It's the wild card. You don't know what's going to
Fluidity.
happen, right? Yeah. So yeah. So the Jokers are particularly interesting in that regard. And then then it kind of gets very Marvel-esque, like a Marvel comic. It just becomes like this like zoo of what sounds just like arbitrary, imaginative things, but it's not infinitely vast. So like it's very vast, but there's pretty much the same kind of beings that when you encounter them, you see that they're really the same every time. So like they're the same way that when you meet a person, they're looking kind of similar this every time, right? So it seems like they're really there, all the beings.
They choose the same representation.
They choose the same representation. If in fact they reveal their real form, they can change. But like these, for example, the insectoids, I don't see any reason why they would choose that form. We know that humans are pretty, concerned with insects. So why would they be presenting themselves that way? It seems that that's their actual form. One of the theories I have about that is that maybe particular forms in um, inform particular functions in
Yeah,
engineering. It's a big thing, right? So maybe there's something about hive minds
yeah.
because they are hive mind that requires this kind of a shape. So even across dimensions, that's the shape that is being maintained for hive minds, that they're the best for hive mind thinking. And they seem to also be the ones that are weaving physical realities. They kind of take care of the technical stuff.
Yeah. So have you seen the mantis beings?
Yep, yep. They're part of the insectoids.
Yeah, they seem like the engineers in a sense.
Yeah, the big mother spider. She seems to be holding all the knowledge in her belly. There's all these like kind of like I said, this to anybody who had never done it, this just sounds like a outlandish comic book nonsense. But it's how they appear, pretty much reliably. The insectoids seem to be simulating our universe, so they're the ones responsible for this and a few others. You can think of them like contractors. Like they get information from the source and they kind of do a thing. And they also, one of their most common qualities, I guess, is indifference, which seems to be across the board agreed upon by many that are experiencing them. And very often, some people feel, to them, that feels evil. But I cannot totally understand. They're definitely not evil. They're just indifferent. They don't care. They don't care in the same way that humans care. They don't have that emotional component. And I think it's designed that way to be basically the custodians of karma. So basically, there's no one to plea with. It's just what it is. And I think that distance between the care that people expect to get from any being out there and some beings not having that care, that registers as a negative quality because it's almost like, picking up an empty milk carton that you expected to have some milk in there. And it's almost like, and it kind of feels like that. But they're definitely very indifferent. They don't register on the same level of like, oh, let me take care of you. That they don't do that. There's other beings that do that, but
Right.
that's not their job. They don't.
Empathy is not their job.
Nope, nope. It's very jarring if you expect empathy and then you don't get it. But yeah,
That's perhaps what's going on with some of the UFO experiences where they say they were just very technical, they were doing their job. And so what's your feeling about the whole ET, UFO, NHI?
I've seen UAPs in my life. That's as far as I can say. I've never
Oh,
seen the Greys. I've never seen even not even a ballpark of a neighborhood of something that I could say maybe those were the Greys. Like I've
did you
never encountered that.
did you see orbs or structured craft or
No, when I saw them actually one time it's a light in the sky, just kind of like this classical thing that people report. One time it was really close to me and it was not even a light. It had no lights. It was super close to me, maybe let's say maybe two floors up, like really close, right? So if imagine a two-story building, that's how far it was from me. I was on the 16th floor and it was just above the building, and it was like a cupcake. Just put it upside down so the thick part is on the bottom, like that. And we even with the creases the cupcake has, but it was obviously made out of metal and it was spinning. It was as clear as this phone right now. Like it just there. Like, and my mom saw it with me and I was like, and then it just kind of went. So I know I saw it. Nobody can take that away from me.
did that
So
change your view of reality at that time, or were you already way out there?
I was already totally into that whole Bob Lazar thing and everything. That was the era of the X-Files. I was a kid. What was that, like 14, something like that. It was,
Okay.
it was right, the right time for that. But I know I saw it. So like no one can ever take that away from me. I know I saw it. I saw it as clear as day. There was no confusion. Very clear. I didn't even need it to have lights. I saw it like super clearly. So I know whatever is real. Let's just get this out of the gate. I
Sounds
know
like
that.
sounds like one of Billy Meyer's items, the pictures of Billy Meyer.
Not so much. No, I don't really swim in these waters so much. Let's
Oh,
see. Billy Meyer.
M I think it's Meier.
Yep, I see. Images. Yeah, kind of like that. But
He
not. But it didn't look like the stuff that I'm seeing right now in the
they
images.
accused him of making them up because they look like pie tins and things you put together in your kitchen.
I'll be honest, they look made up to me too. But I don't know anything about his work. So it was like super realistic there, no question. Then the whole industry around it, right? That's like a whole other question. And I call it they are participating in what I call around the cornerism. It's like it's coming, it's coming. It's always been coming, man. And you can sell books and movies while this is happening. It's great. I just spoke to in Contact in the Desert this year. Lovely people. I was actually very pleasantly surprised in the sense that I didn't expect that much respect for rigor and real interest in actual science.
They're
I'm
down to earth.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm really good friends with Paul Hynek, J. Allen Hynek's son. You know, he actually is our CFO in Code of Reality.
Yeah.
Um, and he's kind of like with me in that regard, which is like obviously, you know, who he is and who his father was, one of the only like real scientists who took this like very seriously, aside from Jacques Vallée, of course, and a few others, but there's not a lot of them. Um, and he's like me. He's like, you know, I don't know how many people know this. Paul has never seen, even I saw, he'd never seen a UAP, never. So when he discovered DMT, he always says like, "Oh, I think that's what we were missing. Like that's an actual channel to whatever that is." Um, but when I was in the conference, uh, I discovered that people, to some degree, also becoming disillusioned because it always is around the corner, but they still really wanted to be the case. And to me, I guess the question always becomes, I mean, if it happens tomorrow, I'll be the first one to go like, "Oh my God, that's incredible." But something happened to me in 2012. I just made a conscious decision after being into this kind of stuff, obviously for all the obvious reasons, because it's incredibly fascinating. There's just so many times that nothing happened right on time that I said, okay, I'm just going to make a conscious decision that if December 2012 is going to come and go, I'm getting off the train. I'm just getting off. Like, I don't
Okay.
care anymore. And that's kind of what happened. I was just like, yeah, of course. So then, you know, and this is not me berating the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw it. I just don't know what to do with that unless I can put my hands on it, you know?
I'm kind of in the same position. I've been into it and followed it and studied it. And at this point, it's like, okay, wake me when it's over. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, yeah. Or starting or doing
right,
something.
right. Tell
And
me when
also
they show up.
and also in the end of the day, and this is one of the talks that I gave at the event in Contact in the Desert, and it was actually incredibly well received. So it gave me huge encouragement that interacting with the right kind of people, it was about meditation. And the point that I was making is that, well, have you considered what it would be like to be you the day after the disclosure? Do you think of the disclosure as this transitional event like Christians think of the reckoning? Is that what you imagine it to be? Like, do you imagine it when the aliens come, it solves all your problems?
Oh, no.
No, because you still have to be you. If you're upset all the time, you'll still be upset. Like you have to work on that no matter what. So, you know, the irony is that in order to enjoy everything, including the disclosure, you actually have to point the finger inwards and say, what am I doing today to actually be a better version of myself? Which, of course, is a much more boring message, but
It's
I think it.
the old Buddhist saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water,
Yep.
and after enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
Carry water, exactly.
After this closure, we're still going to have to be responsible for our own shit.
But people, it resonated with them, and that was one of the fullest rooms I've ever spoken to because I did it on the first day. And this is a great little pro tip if you're speaking Contact in the Desert. The first day, everybody are just arriving and there's nothing else going on. So if you happen to be speaking in that moment, everybody will come. So I had like a full room. It was great.
Fascinating. Yeah, I feel like I'm so over it. It's just wake me when they show up. I'll be much happier at that point. So have you seen have you had through the it sounds like you haven't had a real out of body experience through the DMT experiences. Have you had what you would consider like an out of body experience?
I would say disembodied experiences, yes. So like I didn't see like I was popped out of my body, which is what is reported by people who do
Yeah.
out of body. But I definitely felt a complete diffusion of my body and no longer being aware of it. Yeah.
I've had one experience in that hypnagogic state, waking up, of suddenly flying through our neighborhood. And like NDEers report, everything was so much brighter and more colorful and
Mm.
alive. But I
People say very often that it's black and white. I mean, I'm sure there's different kinds, but like very often people would say everything is kind of like real life, but black and white. But it
I
might
think
be because most of them do it at night, so
I
things
think
are
that's a
probably
different layer. I think it's a
interesting.
different layer.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Possible, yeah. So, for example, like this is where it's super interesting to me. I actually got the chance of very briefly meeting Tom Campbell in the same conference, and
Sure.
I think the work he's doing is so important, and I even fully buy his whole perception of what's happening with him, which is he was preparing for lifetimes. I'm fully on board, and then even him, like for me, of course, just not asking anyone to follow me there, but like that, it was like all of a sudden he makes this arbitrary choice, which he says, yeah, well, in his mind, what is being simulated is just Earth. I'm like, why would that be the case? Like, it's why what like what an arbitrary choice to make, it just tells you that people are never immune to inject their preferences into things. And this is why I'm constantly reminding myself that my most salient experiences to me must sound insane to someone.
Oh yeah.
When I'm speaking, I'm always thinking, okay, what it might be like to be on the receiving end of what I'm saying. Can I cushion that in a way that is considerate for the other person's point of view? Because ultimately, we want to create a way of communicating that does not preclude anyone. And it seems that invariably we kind of miss where we fail at that because it's so easy to not know what somebody needed to hear in order to be open to the message. It's and this is why whenever we're talking about these special abilities and things like this, if like for example with out of body in particular, I'm super interested simply because I'm really trying to make it happen at some point. Like I tried the whole fall asleep and then wake up a little earlier than you're supposed to, and couldn't do it so far.
Me too.
Yeah, but I'm again. I have a friend who's like ultra successful in life,
Time it,
super
the time it
yeah
happened for me, it was just random. I wasn't even trying.
random. Yeah, no, he tried and he managed to do it, and he told me all the things. Super interesting. Um, I'm really interested in that. Everything else, there's just so many. There's so many claims on the table. It's so hard to know. I do think that from all the stuff that I was not aware of myself, that I am to some degree subscribing to, because I think there's enough of that information coming from very different directions, and it always sounds very similar. Which is that yeah, there is this like these like much higher levels, anything that we can experience in psychedelics even, and it's just like almost another pocket. Maybe 5-MeO kind of plays with that realm, like a little bit more like the architect side. And I think that a lot of people are waking up. I've encountered close to 10 individuals in the last 2 years that went through this. Again, serious people that are just going through they
Went
become
through
berserk. It's just like, it's just this information and energy is moving through them and they don't know what to do with it. And I really think that's happening. To what end? If you ask me, this is where me and Paul agree completely. He calls it exposure. I just call it that's what the real disclosure is. Like, I don't think that the disclosure happens when somebody comes at a podium and reads a speech. I don't think that's how it happens. I think real disclosure happens to each individual personally in the way that they can comprehend it. Why would you do it in any other way, especially if you have the technology to clearly, whomever they are, they have the ability to project themselves to us in the way that they choose to, right? They clearly can do that.
it's a
So why would they?
personal awakening.
Exactly, and I think that's what it's really about. Um, and I am aware of some pretty interesting things happening with people that, for all intents and purposes, pointing to like an enormous event occurring soon. They're just kind of like But even when I'm saying it, I cringe inside because it's like, oh, here we go. We're smuggling in the prophecy. I'm not prophesizing anything. I'm saying I'm aware of some things that seem to be indicating that there's something, but then again, it sounds so empty because who doesn't, right? Everybody, as Douglas Adams famously wrote, no, this is just good old paranoia. It's like this is everybody experiencing this. Time will tell. I'm putting my money on things that we can touch, and if we do our best, people say, "Well, how can you know who you're interacting with, and what if this is a trap?" And all of these. Listen, all you can do, and I mean this truly, you can put your best foot forward, and if you know you're acting out of your best ability to be kind, to be considerate, to do your absolute best under your ability to discern in that moment. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
When whatever comes, you'll be happy. That
So what is the most spiritual? I'll use the word spiritual, not religious. What is the most spiritual thing you've encountered? Individuals or experiences or feelings?
I will actually surprise you. I think I've had one actual religious experience that I would not categorize as just spiritual.
Okay.
Because I something happened to me, and basically, there was an individual that came to look at the laser, and he flew all the way from Canada to do so. And he told me that he had this awakening in which he kind of goes up there and sees other people and all that stuff. And at the time, I haven't encountered a lot of people like him, so I said, okay, cool. Like I don't know what to do with that, but I'll accept it. And then he told me some stuff about that by his friend had a vision that by 2035 there's not going to be any more money or power. It's just going to be a system of value. I said, well, it sounds beautiful. Then he saw the laser, and then he pointed to the magnets experiment that I was doing at the time. And oh, the other thing that he said is that since he had his awakening, he have this ability to just kind of follow the voice in a very specific manner. And he says very often I don't really know what it's for or what it does, but I just follow it. And he said I don't see, I feel. I feel very strongly. So when it tells me, I just do, right? And what he was instructed to do, I didn't know at the moment, but that what he was instructed to do is to come behind me and then do this weird thing where he would open his arms and then would do these weird clicking sounds with his mouth and whistle. So like weird stuff like that. And he just stood there, and then I turned around, and I was about to. So it's kind of hard to convince anyone because of what happened next, because I did smoke DMT. But right before I smoked it, and I know because I registered that moment so clearly, I looked at him and I felt this rush of um, love insufficient to describe. It's like the ultimate euphoria, you know. Like I felt this, like just like oh, like God gave you a hug, but not a little bit. It was like somebody turned on something and just like all over my body, almost like somebody injected me with pure MDMA. And I was almost shocked by it. But then as I felt it, then I saw okay, I touched the vape with my lips and I started smoking. So it happened. I felt the feeling, then I smoked, which usually doesn't happen before DMT. Your body is a little kind of nervous no matter what before DMT. It's almost like a regular thing.
Mhm.
So that was outstanding because of that. And after I smoked the first puff, I looked at him and I said, "Are you doing this?" And he says, with his eyes closed, he said, "I'm not doing anything. I'm just seeing you from up there and I'm sending you love." And I was shocked by this, but then I was like, interesting. And then I kept on smoking. And then he opened his eyes and he goes, "We're shifting in three, two, one." And I'm like, "What?" And then I didn't even see his face anymore because it like a golden mask closed on his face, and it was as real to me as real life. So it wasn't like a DMT experience. A golden mask closed on his face, and a beam of light just kind of illuminated him. He looked like completely different. He looked like an object more than a person at that moment, almost like a statue. It was with his eyes, arms open like this, and then everything in the room was shredded to pieces, like everything. Just and I saw all the dark stuff, black stuff, just like blown out of the room like with a hurricane. It was just like, pow! like, and in that moment, I could feel all of a sudden. I realized why that feeling of euphoria came over me. It was almost like it was there to start pacifying me before the thing even starts. Because what started unfolding was just so immense,
Yeah.
to some degree scary,
Yeah.
that it was just basically saying just relax, and it was just like protecting me from the inside, and I felt this enormous pressure coming. It literally felt like the reckoning. Like if I was like, oh, he came here not for the laser, like what was going through my head, but
Yes.
people like him just standing all over the earth right now and it's like protecting people like me, and then the rest is just being blown to smithereens, basically. And that there's no way that this can be delivered with words, but the scale of what I've witnessed and felt cannot be attributed to anything else. There's nothing else in the human or English language that exists but God Almighty. Like
It's
that
not
was that
chemistry.
it was just God. It was just that level of immensity. And that was the only, I would say, like religious experience that I've had, because it was so, now I'm kind of telling you about it because it's so far ago, but I remember I was just it took like 5 or 6 minutes for this whole thing to unfold. And I was kind of freaking out because I was like, at one point I had to like tell us like, where are we going? Like, because my now wife was asleep in the other room. I was like, like, are we leaving? Like, I don't, like, where are we going? Like, I don't. I was freaking out, and he actually had to like open his eyes and goes like, just here, like, it's fine, just relax. And I was like, okay. So then, when this was over, I had just crazy tears in my eyes, and I'm just so confused. And I said, oh, he opened his eyes and he said, we shifted. And then I was like, do you know what just happened? And he said, no, I don't know what happened for you. That's how he said it.
Yeah.
I know that something very big happened for you. I don't know what that is. I can't see. I can only feel. So I know it was enormous. And basically, he said, you don't have to worry about anything else ever again. Just walk the earth and spread light and love. And the reason that this event even stands out to me as solidified as anything else and more than anything else I've ever experienced was because right after this, like maybe less than a minute after this, because reminding you that he told me about the whole by 2035 there's not going to be any more money, all that stuff. All of a sudden, because of what just happened, I had a completely different relationship to what he's saying, right? And I remembered that a week before, literally a week before he came, I was in Costa Rica and I met Charles Eisenstein, and we recorded a conversation. And Charles, one of his books is Sacred Economics, which is exactly about that. Like, how do you create economics that considers value above currency? Like, what is that, right? So then I wanted to show him a portion of the conversation with Charles. So I pulled up my phone, which by the way I got 3 days before from Verizon. It was a brand new phone from a box, brand new. Pulled it out and I'm showing him. I didn't even upload the video to the computer yet. I'm showing him the video, and then I'll show you. Look what starts happening on my phone. This was like maybe a minute after this whole thing unfolded.
You recorded it?
So he had enough of a like mind clarity. I was just besides myself. He had enough mind clarity. The guy, he picked up his phone and started recording my phone because of what was happening. Here it is. So what you're supposed to be seeing,
I think I may have seen this in one of your other interviews,
yeah.
but I don't remember.
So this is what you're supposed to be seeing,
Right?
right? This is Charles talking on my phone,
Right.
right? But this is what started happening on my phone.
Ceremony.
Listen to what he's saying in the first 20 seconds.
It's not coming across. The noise canceling is killing it.
Oh, okay. So he's saying the main value of what I do is not in the semantic content. Because the new story or the new mythology we're transitioning into has a beingness. There's an experience of being that is consistent with it, that is aligned with it. And it can come out in song. Where we are, it is coming out in song. It can come out in stories that doesn't have an obvious moral, but it carries an energy. So anyways, you get the picture. So like this goes on for like about 6 minutes.
If you go back to that video now, does it play correctly?
Yeah, then no. So then I went back to the original video after it stopped. Look, it just switches at the end. Basically, it switches back to normal. You'll see it in a moment.
Uh-huh.
About now, 1 second. There you go. And then we're playing it back again, and it was completely normal. But in the meanwhile, I took a bunch of these, and what's fascinating is that then when well, first of all, that was just insane, and the fact that it allowed us to record it. So, and this is something that your audience can verify. I then contacted my friend who actually happened to have been before. He was an Apple engineer. And I asked him what can cause this, but I just sent him this image, and he said, "What is this?" I said, "It's a glitch on. It was a glitch on my iPhone." He said, "No, it isn't. That's not a glitch that happens on an iPhone." And then I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "No, that's like There's no way that with everything, the architecture, it's just, it can't do that.
Right.
So it was a completely new phone, and it never happened since. Then I asked another friend of mine, who's just an MIT engineer, just more general, and I asked him, Tony, well, give me a scenario where physically I can induce this in the phone. Like, what can I do to make this happen? And he said, well, the only thing I can think about, he said to me, you said the data was not corrupted, right? I said, no. So, okay, the only way that I can think that this can happen is if you can take a very powerful magnet. We're talking about like 1.5 Teslas. Like we're talking about like very powerful.
What I was going to say.
Yeah, and you can specifically point it to where the hard drive writes into the camera. That you can probably do something similar to this, and then you have to remove the magnet, right? But if you ask me why this happened the way it did for you, he's like,
Yeah.
I have no idea how this can be. This actually happened, right? So like, and then there's a few things that happened in the days preceding to this, which was just like they were mental, like in terms of like the synchronicity was just, we're talking about animals that walk into my house. We're talking about like crazy stuff, right? Like in reality, not in imagination. So then at that point, it became clear to me that what they were essentially saying is like, pay attention. This is for real. This is not, because if this would just happen to me and the thing on the phone wouldn't happen, right now it would just be a story in the back of my mind because I have this tangible thing now. Till this day, this holds the title of one of the craziest things I've ever experienced.
So thank you for that. That's tremendous. And so you had this spiritual experience and a number of things leading up to it. I have one more question to ask. What do you think about the dark side? What do you think the idea of, you know, demons and all of that jazz?
I mean, I've seen it.
Do you want to give me a little more?
Yeah, I don't think it's what people say, which is like this is just on our undealt with stuff. Your undealt with stuff can interact with it, but I think they are actual things and they exist on their own side and they just like you eat food, they eat uh, very negative emotions and they would do anything to induce that. The weird thing, which I guess is the just like everything else in life, things are not that simple, right?
Mhm.
It seems that they are just like everybody else. They have they have a place in this world. They're there for a reason. There's the same amount of dark and light, and it's just like energy cannot be created or destroyed. It's not a thing you destroy or overcome. It's a thing that you either integrate or you don't. And as long as you don't integrate it, not just into you personally, but like as a collective, if you don't integrate it into a system that can actually coexist, you will have an infinite battle. But there are ways to arrange reality in such a way that it doesn't have to be a battle, that it can actually be some symbiotic relationship. And from what I saw, there are portions of, excuse me, of reality that learn how to do that, and portions of reality that haven't learned how to do that well enough yet. And that's really what determines how much turmoil exists in every kind of pocket of what exists.
Wonderful, wonderful. I personally believe that we're able to insulate ourselves from the negative, and I believe that the universe is designed to, uh, segregate, sort of like the yin yang. There's a separation, but if we are too interested or too open or too fearful, it provides an opening for those things to come into our experience.
So I'm saying something slightly different. The separation is not favorable. So basically, what happens is that there are powers there that are important for the balance of reality. But the ethical way to go about it, if you know that there's unremovable amount of both light and the dark, you can arrange the world in many different ways. One of them is this, which is just to have kind of like all blackness here, all whiteness here, and then they never to intermingle. But basically, what you're guaranteeing is that half of existence will be in absolute bliss and half of existence would be in absolute misery. The more ethical thing to do collectively is to try and bear enough of the cross, each and one individually, of whatever darkness needs to be bared in order for everybody else to not need to take more than their share. So basically, you have this situation where you're trying to encourage reality to mix in an even way, and it's a very kind of like Jungian perception where if you don't integrate your shadow, the good example that is always given is like if you have the one kid in class that is extremely creative and talented, but he has these components that don't really mix with the class, and the class just kind of rejects him. If it rejects him too much, he might even show up one day with an AK-47, or if they embrace him, he might turn out to be the biggest asset because he's an incredible artist and he will create art all over the walls of the class and will decorate it, right? So like if you embrace it, it becomes the ultimate power of the light itself. And this is something that I don't actually know if that is what is meant by the symbol. I had one of these, deep, deep, deep journeys about the yin yang itself and this relationship between darkness and light. And one thing I noticed, again, I'm not claiming to have some deep insights about the actual symbology and what it meant to represent, but that's what I saw in that vision. What I noticed is that it seems that what it's saying is that light has the ultimate darkness at the heart of it, and darkness has the ultimate light at the heart of it, because that's part of the symbol, right? And you can think of it in terms of they holding the heart of each other hostage, but you can also think of it in terms of actually that whole thing is missing a dimension. And if you extend it to 3 or maybe 4D, all of a sudden the whole thing would make sense and how it's actually folded and related to the full structure. And I think that hit me very hard. I realized that a perfect balance. And then I realized that the kind of the most naked definition you can give to, I guess, what you would call dark and light or good and evil is that the dark energy tries to constantly close the cycle. It tries to close, close, close. The light energy tries to open-ended. So the ultimate light is the thing that it is itself from the alpha to the omega, from the beginning to the end, which is God, because it's the ultimate arc that is infinite in scope, but it is the totality of things. It's the spinal cord of reality. The dark energy, it's literally constantly trying to close, right? So if either one of them runs amok, it creates nothing, because with too much closing, it's rigidity and nothing ever evolves anymore. Too much openness, nothing ever happens. So the combination of the perfect trying to open things and close them at the right kind of pace creates beauty, creates structures that are actually informed by both in the perfect merger of both qualities. And then you can think of it in terms of feminine and masculine. And it was a very profound realization for me. That being said, I do agree with you that in certain instances, we do get to say, that's my boundary. And that's okay too.
I completely agree. I have this further concept that you have expressed, which was we need to integrate the shadow. And it doesn't mean we have to become the shadow, but we want to embrace it rather than push it aside or push it. I couldn't say it any better.
Yeah. No, notice that the most trustworthy people are the ones that, as Alan once used to talk about it, right? They have a very open, irreducible rascality. They're not pretending to be, holier than thou. They're just like, yeah, I'm the same piece of shit like everybody else. That's the guy you trust, right? And that's why, because they have a very integrated shadow. That person can be dangerous if they have to be. That's what an integrated shadow is.
I I know what you mean in spades. So my friend Tom will not be happy with me if I don't ask this last question. There's something you've said you don't want to reveal to the world, or that you don't want to reveal, except perhaps to your wife on your deathbed. Can you say anything about the category of that?
Unfortunately, no. The way that I went about even voicing any of that was that I was exploring how much of this I can say without it feeling wrong in my body. When I approach even the prospect of talking about it, it feels extremely wrong in my body. So I know, as you could hear just now in my tremble of my voice, that is an indicator for me that I'm not supposed to be talking about it. And I don't even think that it's a matter of, like a secret that nobody's supposed to know. I think it might be the case that part which I always said, I think maybe that was just for me. Maybe that was for me to carry. But I don't know if one day it will change. I know how annoying it must be, you know, when you but what one thing I can say is that whatever in fact is true, everybody has access to it to the degree that it's important for them to know and to be informed about if they just open themselves to it. So whatever it is that in fact that was, if it is to be communicated to others, if people align themselves with a certain kind of way of being, they will know it. You know, I'm sure of it.
They already know it.
Or already know it. Yeah.
Mr. Goler, Danny, fabulous, fabulous time talking with you. I'm so very appreciative of you and your work and having you share this reality with me.
Thank you so much, Daniel. That was a real pleasure.
All right.